What is up, Type 1 team? Okay, this video is a follow-up video to my original Exway Flex update. And not so much a review, just an update of what was going on. So that was at 50 miles. Now I have 250 miles on the board. So I felt like it would be a good time after so many hours on this thing to update you guys and let you know how the board's been performing. We're going to cover the good, the bad, and the ugly. And at the end of the video, if you stick around, I'm going to let you know if I'd recommend buying the Exway Flex.
Life is good, everything good. Alexander J.
Joey loves that shit. Hey.
We live it. It's
The
all
real
good.
Alexander J.
The next up and coming superstar. Look at this up, man.
Here she is, in all her glory, the Exway Flex. And as you can see, I have put this thing through its paces over the last 250 miles. I think I'm at about 270 right now. So let's start off with the good. I will say that I love the concave of this board, the flex of this board. It really feels planted on the ground, which is something that I really appreciate. It soaks up bumps really well. It's a smooth ride. Not a lot on the board is shaking as you're cruising down the road, which is nice because I rode my buddy's Meepo V3 and I was reminded when I had my V2 Meepo of how bad the roads actually beat you up. How much those vibrations transfer into your ankles and your knees and your body. And when you get off, you still feel like you're vibrating a little bit. This mitigates that quite a bit. And that has to do with not only the grip tape, because it's actually got a foam pad underneath, but the board itself has enough flex to be able to absorb some of those bumps, which is really nice. The other thing that I love about this board is the power. The power on this board is really nice. It picks up quickly, gets up to speed, maintains its speed really well, and I feel confident on the board at top speed, and that's typically how I ride the thing, top speed at all times. Bit of a freaking lunatic, but you know, that's how I like to ride. I put my tunes in, I jam out, I have fun, but it feels really comfortable at top speed with the truck cinched down pretty tightly. I will say that if there's any moisture on the ground whatsoever, these wheels are very slippery, very, very slick. If you're looking for something that has a little bit more bite, maybe you want to do a little off-roading in grass, dirt, things like that. I mean, I really wouldn't recommend that with a belt drive system, but if that's what you're into and that's what you think you're going to be doing, I would go with like a cloud wheel or a larger wheel than what comes on here. This is a street wheel, so any type of moisture on the ground is going to be slick. This board's gone through a ton of iterations, meaning these firmware updates that you update on your phone via the app connects to the board and changes things. On my 50-mile review, it went from having serious battery issues, overheating all the time, putting on the brakes randomly. It was almost a super dangerous board to ride, to be honest. But they've updated it more and more and more, and every time I notice something a little bit different. So let's talk about some of the problems I've been having. The latest firmware version is on here. There are still a few things that I'm noticing that's happening with this board. After a full charge, you get on the board, take off, you're ready to rip. Every single time, without fail, the remote will buzz at you and say, "Warning, high voltage." That doesn't affect how the board rides, but it is annoying because you can't see your speed, you can't see what gear you're in. All the remote here says is high voltage. In order to mitigate that, you power off the board and turn it back on. It's an inconvenience. It's not the end of the world, but it is something to note that as of the update that's on here now, it says high voltage every single time. Another thing that I've noticed about the battery on this is that if you're at 100% and you leave it plugged in, and you leave it plugged in for a couple of days, or even unplugged, either way, the battery will drain. So if you leave this plugged in, you have a nice little spot for it in your room, just take note that you might pull this off and it'll be at 80% or 85 or 75%. The only way to change that is to physically unplug it, let it sit for maybe a full day before you plug it back in, and it recognizes that the board needs to be charged. At 20%, this board always overheats. I ride on speed number 4, which is the fastest speed. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I ride on speed 4, and it always overheats at about 20%. When it overheats, the remote, once again, will flash at you, let you know battery temperature 55 degrees Celsius, and it will cut down on the power. So instead of going 26 miles an hour top speed, it'll go maybe 21, 20. And we'll continue to ride that way until the board dies. Now, is that a make or break? No, but it is frustrating because it does cut down on the top speed and the braking power as well. So keep that in mind. When you are riding, it does not stop as quickly. So you have to do a little foreshadowing when you're riding the board. Let's get into maintenance. After 250 miles, which is what these belts are typically rated for, I did have to change them out. I ordered some new ones off of Amazon. I popped them on. It took 3 rides to get the tension of the belts correct. The first ride was much too loose. The second ride, one was a bit too tight. And then the third ride, I feel like I finally got it dialed in. But there's really not much room to tighten and loosen these things. I wish that they had developed a better system to adjust the tension on the belts. But, with belt drives, you do have just routine maintenance. You have, rocks and things like that going into the belt drive, which is something I wasn't used to coming from a hub motor. But this thing has taken some serious abuse over the 270 plus miles that I have on it. So as of right now, this board, it still has the overheating issue at 20% every single time. It has the high voltage warning when you charge it up to 100% and first get on the board. Now, if you shut down the board and turn it back on, that's mitigated. But for $750 or whatever, it was something in the ballpark of $700 to $800 when I purchased the board, these types of issues shouldn't be a thing. And it took 200 miles of riding it with all these different firmware updates to get to where it's at today. Where it's rideable, I'm still having all these annoyances of a privileged guy who has a fucking awesome board. But if you are looking to go buy a board, I have heard of a ton of people talking about the Backfire Zealot. There's a couple other boards floating around that don't have these battery issues. Now that they put the smart batteries in the Exway Flex, they can't seem to get the firmware to match up with the hardware properly, have that marriage come together, have them work in synchronicity. At the end of the day, should you buy the Exway Flex, I personally would not make the purchase again. I would go shopping a little bit more, do a little bit more research. And it's tough sometimes when you're scouring YouTube and all you see is like the high points of people sponsored by all these different companies, so you only get the highlights. But after 250 miles, my recommendation is to shop elsewhere. So Exway, if you want to make this right, hit your boy up. I'll give a real review of your board after 100, 150, 200 miles and hopefully not have the same issues that I've been having with this one. Anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider subscribing. I'm not a review channel whatsoever, but I do want to show you guys things that I do have experience with and that I'm passionate about. And riding electric skateboards happens to be one of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, show me with a big old thumbs up. I love y'all. Deuces. Of a privileged man. And riding electric skateboards happens. And riding electric... My answer is... keep fucking shopping.
control, control.